Jesus fucking Christ. He dropped the video today and it already has 10k likes. It's pretty damn impressive for an FGC channel.
In Tekken, walking backwards is slow. But if you quickly tap back twice, you can do a backdash which is much faster and more evasive. This is not too unlike other games, but dashing in Tekken is different because you can interrupt it with almost any other command before the animation finishes. But one thing I cannot do in the middle of my backdash is another backdash. I have to wait and...
It's just interesting to note, and maybe he'll mention it, but like the Korean backdash and the wave dash were an accident. They were not meant to be there. And they came with Tekken 3, and it's when they introduced this concept that, or mechanic, that any type of movement can be cancelled into any attack and any additional type of movement. So suddenly you had, you know, backdash sidestep, or the Korean backdash, backdash crouch, basically, and wave dash, crouch dash, and you cancel into standing into another crouch dash, totally by accident. And then it suddenly turned out to be this super interesting mechanic, and the developers were very happy, and it's still here to this day, but it was an accident. And I also want to inject here that they are really dropping the ball with this. They should now wholeheartedly embrace this mechanic by giving, for example, the Mishimas a unique animation on a crouch dash. Imagine how much personality it would add to a character, or Kazuya, for example, if his wave dash animation is different to Heihachi's. And again, different to Jin's. Like, just holding their arms in a different way would add so much personality. And it's the same thing with the backdash. So much could be done with that animation-wise. And you'll see a lot of games, for example, MK actually does a lot with this to create character. But they don't do that with Tekken, unfortunately. Bear Bottle, thank you so much for 10 gift subs. So generous, sir, so generous.
Until my backdash animation finishes before doing another one. It doesn't matter how violently I mash back, I can only go this fast. I mean, how broken would it be if I could backdash again before my previous backdash animation ended? But if you watch competitive Tekken, it looks like they're doing just that.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. And the question is, would it be broken if it was easier to do Korean backdashing? You could argue both ways. I used to argue that you should simplify movement, because as they've restricted movement in Tekken 7, should it not be accessible to everyone? Is it interesting that something as basic as moving backwards, retreating, something as simple as that is made super obnoxious in Tekken? And you need to practice it like crazy. It requires so much execution. Should something as basic as retreating be that difficult? So I used to argue it should be simplified, but then I also buy the argument that this is now Tekken's identity. But I don't know how I would deal with that come Tekken 8.
How are they doing it? Tekken won't let you interrupt the backdash to do another backdash, but as I mentioned earlier, it will let you interrupt it with nearly any other command. For example, one of those commands is crouch, which is just down. From the crouch position, you can tap back again to do another backdash. If you repeat this fast enough, you can repeatedly backdash faster than only tapping back. This is called BackDash Cancelling, and as you can see, it's kind of a workaround to backdash faster. When competitive...
So there he was doing a reverse wave dash. As you can see, he hits back, neutral, and quarter circle back. It's basically wave dashing here, which you'll see a lot of Mishimas do. They learn to wave dash, and then they just reverse that for the backdash. But that is not as effective as doing the Korean backdash, and this input does not work with Brian and Paul. Famously, this will have them do back sways, which you do not want. Bad Burns, thank you so much for the 2 gift subs.
Folk found out about this,
and Bear Bottle,
for the most efficient way to do it. So after a normal backdash with back, they found that down back was the closest input on the lever that would interrupt the backdash. But what they also found out was that if you let the stick go from the down back position, it would register another back input.
Yeah.
kind of weird, but there's a reason why this works. If you look inside a lever, there are only 4 switches: up, down, left, and right. If the lever is in the down-back position, you're actually holding down 2 switches inside, down and back.
Yep.
If you let go of the stick in a way so the down trigger is released first, the back input will still be pressed in for a split second before it goes back to neutral position. This gives you a free back input just for releasing the stick. From here, tap back just one more time, and you get another.
It's interesting to hear exactly how that works mechanically. I was always just thinking that as soon as you did down back, that sort of buffered one back input for the backdash. But it is what is happening, but it's nice to see how it happens mechanically.
Backdash. If you do this multiple times, you get what's known as the Korean backdash, and it's the quickest way to move backwards. You'll see that people have mastered this at the highest levels of play, and if you watch the top players' lever motions, you'll notice there's a dexterity to ground movement. This is an example of emergent gameplay, where players discover a way to play that wasn't planned by the creators. But maybe you feel that this is an exploit. The game didn't expect you to move faster than this speed, but the tryhards found a way to abuse the system. Now everyone has to do hand gymnastics to do basic movement.
You the developers?
Oh, there we go.
Everyone has to do hand.
I actually remember this thread on Shoryuken. It's quite a few years ago. Someone posted a Korean backdash guide, and Van Electronic here writes, "Nice tutorial, but Korean backdash shouldn't even exist in the first place. People shouldn't be forced to learn hand gymnastics to perform basic movement in a fighting game. But it's just bad design. At least you acknowledge that it's completely non-intuitive." And like it or not, especially if you're a Tekken zealot, you religiously bow down to the altar of Tekken, you love the identity of Tekken, and you want Korean backdash to be difficult, especially if you've mastered it. Why should someone else, get easy access to this fruit, this holy backdash fruit that took me, 5 million years to plant and grow? Nice analogy there. But I feel there definitely is merit to what this guy is saying, and it's as like I said at the start, Tekken is difficult enough. It's like you have so many 50 characters to learn to deal with that total of what, 6,000 attacks? 6,000. It's just so complicated. And then the one thing you have to try and neglect labbing all of that, to try and counter having to lab all of that shit, you can just move away. But the game makes it so hard for you to step away. They've already reduced the strength of a backdash, and they've improved the hitboxes of basically all of the moves, like more tracking, range, etc. And it's like, isn't this like super unfair to players and beginners and intermediates, that your only easy way of getting away from this super obnoxious pressure and labbing is made super hard by having such a difficult retreat with the Korean backdash? And there definitely is a lot of merit to that.
And gymnastics to do basic movement.
You the developers? The ones that pull that shit.
But Tekken isn't the only game which has a movement exploit. Basketball has it too. When basketball was invented in 1891, James Naismith's intended rules were that the player could not run with the ball. They had to pass it before they could move again. But in 1897, the sweatlords over at Yale discovered that you could technically bounce past the ball to yourself without violating the rules. If you repeatedly did this, you were able to move indefinitely with possession of the ball. This was called dribbling. It was initially kind of busted, so they had to make additional rules so players couldn't start and stop dribbling whenever they wanted. But even after the patches, some people still wanted dribbling to be removed. It wouldn't matter if these were just random people, but these were members of the Joint Basketball Rules Committee, the then central governing body for the rules of basketball. In 1927, one member is quoted saying, "The Rules Committee believes that limitation of the dribble is a necessary step in the best interests of basketball." Instead of allowing the player to keep dribbling the ball, they wanted to make it so you could only bounce the ball once. When they announced this rule, there was a huge controversy among coaches, players, and fans of the game. A technique that was studied, practiced, and crafted for decades by the ones most invested in the game could be forever gone. To stop these rule makers from removing dribbling, a coach, who was also a student of James Naismith, formed the National Association of Basketball Coaches, which took part in nationwide protests. They succeeded in stopping the rule change that year, and the members became known as Guardians of the Game. 83 years later, it's hard to imagine basketball without dribbling because people now understand that it's a large part of what makes the game exciting and unique.
James goes in and slams.
How you're allowed to move defines the game you're playing, and the same goes for fighting games. Can you run, short hop, dash, wave dash, or maybe dash in the air? Games that let you air dash are literally called air dashers because it's such a distinguishing factor of the gameplay. And maybe your game doesn't have any.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
When you change the movement in a big way, you're changing the game in a big way. It's a reason why many Smash players...
So I don't know where I cut off, but yeah, I understand what he's trying to say. Like, dribbling makes basketball more interesting. BackDash Cancel should be kept in Tekken.
Melee, a game where the movement uniquely revolves around its wave dashing and L canceling techniques. But Tekken has had step canceling, dash canceling, and the Korean backdash for pretty much every version of the game, and it's unlike anything else I've played. It's actually one of the things that attracted me to the game. But all that said, most people who play Tekken won't know or care about the Korean backdash because the game is designed to be enjoyed without it. But it's there for you if you want to get good. This was Gerald from CoreAGaming. Thanks for watching. This video is sponsored by Ridge Wallet, which I know or care about the Korean backdash because the game is designed to be enjoyed without it. But it's there for you if you want to get good. This was Gerald from CoreAGaming. Thanks for watching.
Really great video. So much great information. I don't know if a basketball comparison is... I mean, that's basketball, that's sports. This is a video game. You can make that comparison. But yeah, I just don't know. It's like... I don't know if I agree. I don't think it's crazy for people to say maybe movement should be made easier. I think Speed Kicks also made the comparison to basketball. I think he said, like, I don't remember, I don't watch basketball, but it was something like, if I've practiced dribbling like crazy and you haven't, obviously I should be allowed better movement than you. And I think no one disagrees there. But what I think of, and this is Tekken's identity, but what I always get back to is like, Tekken 7 to me is such a legacy player game. It really favors legacy players in that the most important thing to have in Tekken, thank you Hamad, is character knowledge. Without it, you're pretty much blown up. And in Tekken 7, you have more characters than ever. So it favors legacy players and strong players in that they've probably played another Tekken game, and then they come to Tekken 7, and they just have to figure out the new characters. Right. And they already have practiced backdash cancel a lot, so the nerfed movement of Tekken 7 doesn't hit them too hard. You know? It's like for legacy players, it still works. Whereas I think of like beginner players picking up Tekken 7, and you have this bloated mess of a game with 50 characters, and the offense of the characters has been strengthened. They have more reach, they track more to the sides, and more attacks than ever, and very evasive offensive moves. And the labbing never ever ends. You're gonna have to take my word. It's like it never ends. You always have a character to learn in this game. And the one thing the beginner has to try and move away easily has been greatly nerfed. The backdash, and it doesn't affect Speed Kicks because he already has a very strong Korean backdash. But for a beginner, it's like, oh, you better just lab all of that shit, that huge Mount Everest of labbing, because the backdash is not going to help you. It's so restricted, just a single backdash. So you're kind of forced to learn a very proper Korean backdash And I feel like it's so extreme in Tekken. Just the basic thing of being able to move back. In my humble opinion, this was handled better in Tekken 5, where it was a less bloated game, and what they gave you there was the option to just, if you felt swamped by, you know, people constantly pitbulling you, one simple backdash hitting back covered enough space to most of the time put you away from the opponent, and you didn't have to know every single string in the game, and you didn't need a perfectly crisp Korean backdash. In my opinion, that was more well handled. But, you know, obviously opinions are going to go in all directions on this. But I think Tekken 7 hurts beginners too much and rewards legacy players too much with all of the bloating that sort of almost requires you to be very knowledgeable about prior Tekkens before picking up Tekken 7, because otherwise it's overwhelming, and they even reduce your movement so that you basically have to acquire a strong Korean backdash to try and negate all of that labbing. But yeah, reduced movement hurts beginners a lot, whereas legacy players who already have a strong Korean backdash, it hurts them as well, but it's not that as noticeable for them. But yeah, I hope I made somewhat of a point there. But of course, what speaks against what I mean, I used to say like last year that I'd love in Tekken 8 to have, you know, basically just hitting back, normal backdashes in succession. I felt that should be stronger. I feel the game is hard enough as it is. The hardest part about this game is not the Korean backdash, it's the amount of labbing. So in my opinion, make backdashing easier or strengthen the single backdash. But of course, I understand people say it's the game's identity. Everything about this game is supposed to be obnoxiously difficult. But the point remains from shoryuken.com, what that poster said, that something as basic as retreating, should it really involve like very complex finger gymnastics? I know it's Tekken's identity, but that's a very fair point to make, especially in a game where you have 50 characters that just overwhelm you with 100 moves each. And the only way to retreat is like spending countless amount of hours learning to back away. So it's a fair point to make. But great video by CoreAGaming. Great video.